5. Today, we're tearing into a really interesting resource.
Mm-hmm.
This one is all about helping you specifically improve your English, focusing on, building vocabulary and conversational fluency.
Right.
And the whole thing is built around a pretty simple, relatable context, a high school science fair.
That's right. And our mission here in the is really to look inside this resource. We want to figure out exactly how it works.
Yeah, what makes it tick?
What are the core pieces, the techniques it uses? We want to pull out the most useful information, the learning methods, so you can understand why it might actually be a good shortcut for boosting your English speaking skills.
And it does have some clever ideas packed in. It starts with just a simple conversation, highlights keywords from that chat, and then gives you really structured ways to practice using them. Let's unpack the approach.
Okay, yeah. Let's start where the resource does, with the core conversation. It's just a short dialogue between two students, Sarah and Jake.
Talking about the science fair.
Yep, the upcoming science fair.
And right off the bat, Jake's in that familiar spot. He's not ready. He doesn't have an idea.
Right.
And he feels like everyone else is just doing the same old thing. The source actually quotes him, noting others are just doing volcanoes or robots.
Yeah, the classic science fair tropes.
Yeah.
And Sarah pushes back a bit. She says they need something special to win.
Okay.
And this moment is actually pretty key, I think, to the resource's whole approach, because Sarah introduces a phrase that becomes really central to the lesson.
Yes, the phrase, let's try to think outside the box.
Exactly.
And it's not just a casual line. The resource really zooms in on this one.
It does. It's presented specifically as an idiom.
Yeah.
A phrase where the meaning isn't obvious just from the individual words.
Right. Kick the bucket or something.
Precisely. So thinking outside the box means having a new or creative idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by doing that, by thinking outside the box, that they come up with their actual project idea.
Which is, I thought, a fantastic idea. Instead of, another baking soda volcano.
Right.
They propose making something useful, like a machine that helps water plants when you're not home.
It's simple, it's practical, and it totally fits the science fair context. Jake gets it immediately, calls it smart.
And the resource makes a point of highlighting how simple the materials are, too. Just a bottle, some string, and a timer.
Yeah, nothing too complicated.
Yeah.
Jake's next line is also quite insightful, actually, both about the project and maybe about the learning method itself. He says the idea is simple but different.
That's a great way to put it. Simple but different, innovative.
Mm-hmm.
They wrap up the conversation pretty quick, agreeing to start building tonight because they want to win that prize.
Right.
So, okay, that's the foundation. A short, relatable chat with the problem, a key idiom pops up, and then a simple, creative solution. It gives you a real-world context for the language.
Exactly. And building right on that context, the resource then dives into the key vocabulary, words pulled directly from that conversation we just talked about.
Okay.
The goal here, as the source explains it, is to explore these new words and really understand their meaning through examples.
Makes sense. So they start with science fair itself. Logical, it's the main topic.
Yeah.
It's defined simply as a school event where students show science projects. And the example they give is Tom won first prize at the science fair.
And what's smart, as you mentioned, is how they weave this word and the others throughout the exercises that come later reinforces it.
Okay, so next up.
Volcanoes, defined as mountains that can explode with fire, smoke, and lava. The example, the teacher showed a picture of real volcanoes. Again, they show you how this word appears in different spots in the material.
And then back to that key idiom we discussed. Think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
The source reinforces its definition, to have a new or creative idea. And the example sentence links right back to the conversation. Let's think outside the box and try something different.
And this phrase gets a lot of attention. It pops up in various examples, practice questions. They really hammer it home.
Okay. And the last one.
Finally, string. Sounds basic, but it's essential for their project idea.
Right, the watering machine.
Defined simply as a thin piece of rope used to tie things. Example, I tied the package with a piece of string. And again, the source shows different ways string is mentioned or used.
Gotcha. And the resource makes a really important point right here, doesn't it? About repetition.
It does, yeah. Stating explicitly that repetition is very important to become fluent in English. They actually recommend engaging with the original material, like watching the video it came from, many times.
That focus on repetition is the perfect lead-in to the next part, right? Which is all about the interactive practice.
Absolutely. This is where you, the learner, Actively use the language and the concepts from the conversation and the vocabulary sections.
So this practice part is designed to really boost your speaking and listening skills, using that original dialogue as the foundation.
Right. The first type of practice they offer is called listen and answer. The idea is pretty straightforward. You listen to questions about the conversation you just heard, and you try to answer them out loud before the correct answer is revealed. It forces you to recall the details and actually form a response.
It's like a comprehension check and a mini speaking exercise rolled into one. And they give you lots of questions. For instance, they might ask, did Sarah talk to Jake about the book fair?
Right. And the answer pops up, no, she didn't.
Then maybe, did Sarah talk to Jake about the science fair? Answer, yes, she did. Simple recall.
Exactly. Or they'll check your understanding of the core problem. Was Jake ready for the science?
No, he wasn't.
What was Jake worried about?
His project, he didn't know what to make. Stuff like that.
Yeah. And they even check if you caught the details of Jake's complaint. Was everyone building plateaus and space shuttles? Which is kind of a trick question.
Yeah. The answer is no.
Right. Then a clarification. What were other students building?
Volcanoes and robots.
They also make sure you grasped the main suggestion. What did Sarah say they should do?
Think outside the box.
And then reinforcing the meaning again. What does think outside the box mean?
Have a new idea. It means to try something different.
They go through the whole conversation like this, checking details about the idea, the materials, their plan to start.
It seems like a really solid way to actively engage with the material. You're not just passively listening. And the resource suggests doing this daily for faster improvement.
Yeah, which makes total sense. It builds that recall muscle, helps lock it in.
Okay, so that's listen and answer. What's the second practice type?
The second key practice type is shadowing. This is where you listen to the speakers in the original conversation.
Sarah and Jake.
Right. And then you immediately repeat their lines out loud, trying your best to match their rhythm, their intonation, the flow.
Okay, so this is crucial for developing more natural sounding English pronunciation and, well, flow, right?
Exactly. You're not just saying the words, you're practicing how they're spoken in a real context. It helps with the musicality of the language.
And the resource gives you specific lines to practice.
It does. It breaks it down by speaker. For Sarah, you'd practice saying lines like, "Hi, Jake, are you ready for the science fair?"
Okay.
Or, "Let's try to think outside the box, and how about a machine that helps water plants when you're not home?" Trying to mimic her delivery.
And for Jake's part,
You practice his lines like, "Not really, I don't know what to make."
mm-hmm.
Or that key reaction, "Oh, that's smart. We can use a bottle, some string, and a timer." Mimicking his enthusiasm, maybe.
I see. So it's a step beyond just understanding the words. It's about actively producing the language with the right sound and feel.
Precisely.
So, okay, you can really see how this resource layers the learning then. You start with a simple, engaging story, get the core vocabulary and context. Then you drill comprehension and active recall with that Q&A format.
A listen and answer.
Right. And finally, you practice mimicking native speech patterns with the shadowing.
It's quite a structured approach. And the resource's ultimate recommendation, it's basically to work through this whole cycle, the conversation, vocab, and both practice types, daily for about a week.
Repeating the exercises each day.
Exactly. It's a focused approach. It's designed to take that one simple conversation and turn it into usable, more fluent English skills through that targeted repetition and practice.
So this deep dive has really shown us the blueprint, the kind of underlying method of this resource. You've got a relatable story as the base.
Yeah, the foundation.
Key vocabulary pulled out and explained clearly. And then these structured, repeatable exercises, the listen answer for checking you got it and remembering it, and shadowing for actually sounding more natural.
It's a clear path, isn't it?
Yeah.
Moving from just understanding the context to actively using the language elements within that specific context.
Definitely. And it makes you think. We saw how Sarah and Jake used that idea of thinking outside the box to solve their science fair problem.
Right, to come up with the plant water.
So how could you, listening now, apply that same principle to your own English learning journey? Maybe it's using the vocabulary words we talked about today, like string or volcano, or even think outside the box in some unexpected sentence you create.
Or maybe finding a new creative way to integrate those practice methods. Could you do the listen-answer technique with a different audio clip you find? Or shadow a different speaker?
Yeah. What's one outside-the-box thing you could try today or this week with your English practice based on what we've just explored here? Something to think about.